Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of my photo editing series. This week I'm going to be showing you guys how to do complicated mask. A lot of times when you're trying to make a mask, for instance in your sky, to make an adjustment, it's difficult because you have trees like this and there's little tiny gaps where the sky shows through, so you can't just make a big selection of the sky because then you have the little tiny areas that don't get selected, and it's kind of a pain if you just went in and hand colored in a mask for all that. One, it's not going to be very accurate, and two, it's going to take you forever. So I'm just going to show you how I go about doing that, and let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I'm going to do is select my magic wand tool, and I'm just going to make a large general selection of the sky. As you can see, it's not perfect, but it does get vast majority of the sky selected, and I'm going to go ahead and create, in this case, a color balance adjustment layer, since I'm going to be color balancing the sky later. And you can see that goes ahead and creates a mask for me of the sky that I selected, and you can view the mask by just alt clicking on the mask in the layers panel over here, and you can click off there to go back to your original image. But now let's make some adjustments to this mask. Make sure you have it selected in this window and then click on layer 1. And we're going to go up to select color range. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to use the dropper here to pick a color that's in the area in between all the trees. So maybe right around there. And if you look in the preview window down here, you can see where it's made a selection, and I'm actually going to turn on the selection preview for the main screen so you can see what I'm actually selecting. And it looks like I kind of missed it here, so let's try a little bit better. So I'm going to pick the blue color, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to basically color in, but let's hit OK off of that. And you can see here now we've got a selection that actually fills in a lot of these areas in between the tree, and you didn't have to manually mask those. So I'm going to go back to the mask that I had, and I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to select white, 100% opacity, 100% fill, and I'm just going to pick a big brush and paint into the mask in between all the little leaves in the trees here. And you can again alt click on it to check and see how it looks. You can see I've got a pretty good selection going here, and pretty happy with that. So we'll click off of that, and then I'm going to come zoom out, and we're going to work on this area over here. So again, you can just do the same thing, select, let's select layer 1, select color range, and we'll select right around there. And fuzziness, I didn't mention this, but this allows you to basically adjust how much of that color and the colors surrounding it selects. So the less fuzziness, the more specific, and the more fuzziness, the less specific the selection will be. I tend to go around 40, 43, tends to give me the best selections. So let's hit OK. And again, I'm just going to select that layer. I've got white selected, and I'm going to paint in all these areas around the tree. And I'll just check and see how that looks. Looks pretty good. And if you at any point see that you've put the mask somewhere that you don't want it, you can always just go in and paint it out. It looked pretty good though. So let's take a look and see how that's looking so far. I'm just going to make a large color balance adjustment so we can see. This isn't how I would actually edit it, but it'll give you a good idea of what you've got and what you still need to mask in. So you can see we've still got a couple issues over here with the blue. So I'm just going to keep doing the select color range, and you can up the fuzziness to get some of those areas. You can see it got a few more of those spots that we're missing. And it really does a great job of getting into those small little nooks and crannies. You can just keep doing that until you get to the end. Oops. Make sure when you're painting into your mask that you actually have the mask selected and not the color underneath, or not the layer underneath, because then you're going to have to go back and undo what you've done. Alright, so that looks pretty good. I'm not seeing any gaps in the selection, in the mask rather. So now I'll actually color adjust it the way that I would have done so. Which for my skies, I typically tend to push quite a bit of cyan and then adjust the blue to taste in the midtones. And then I also will usually go into the shadows and pump a little bit of cyan. And you can really go either way. It just depends on how the sky turned out. In this case, I'm actually going to push in a little bit of yellow. And you can see it's a subtle adjustment, but in this case, because of the way we created the mask, you can see it's only affecting the sky, and I'm not having problems with the tree also getting the color adjustment that I just made, which oftentimes you'll see when people try to hand paint in the mask. Instead of making a selection like this, you'll see where the adjustment overlaps onto the trees. So this is a really nice way that you can go about making those selections. And in my next episode, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into color balancing and how you can go about that. But one other cool thing about this, once you've made a mask for your sky like this, the cool thing is you now can actually have a mask for everything else, which is your foreground. So if you just control click the mask that you already created for your sky, and I'm just going to create another color balance adjustment layer, and then hit control I, you just inverted the mask, and now you have a mask for your foreground. So just like that, you've got your background mask and your foreground mask, and you can make adjustments independently going forward, whether it be with color balance, hue saturation, levels adjustments. You can now edit the sky and the foreground independently of each other, which is really useful for those for getting some really nice edits. So I think that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Be sure to leave any comments or questions that you have below. Next episode is going to be on color balancing, but if you have any suggestions for future episodes, leave that in the comments as well. And thanks for watching. See you next time.